Hello and welcome to a special edition of C-Suite Live. I'm Aditi Roy with Aditi Roy Media and previously with CNBC and ABC News. Today we're hosting a special workshop on how to level up your LinkedIn game. This is a practical step-by-step guide to building a standout profile, creating content that works, and overcoming those mental roadblocks. Well, why does this matter? Well, LinkedIn has more than 1 billion followers. It's growing fast. 8 people are hired every minute, if you can believe it, through LinkedIn. Nearly 9 out of 10 recruiters use LinkedIn to vet candidates. But being an effective LinkedIn user, as you know, can be difficult and daunting. That's where our powerhouse panelists come in. They're here to guide you through the process. Let's meet them now. We start off with Jess Jensen. She's a comms expert who has worked at companies like Nestle, Adidas, Microsoft, and Qualcomm. Gary Liu is the CFO at BioAmerica and frequent LinkedIn voice. Von Leidumon is a TEDx speaker and CEO of WorkSmart. Welcome to all three of you.
Thanks, Aditi.
Thank you, Didi.
Well, while we're chatting with our illustrious panelists, we want to remind our live audience today to have your questions ready. We'll be answering them later on in the workshop. But let's dive right on in. I want each panelist, first of all, to give us your street cred. So, Jess, let's start with you. You have worked for some iconic companies and leaders. What are you doing now? And how has LinkedIn helped you grow your own business?
Thank you. So as you mentioned, I've had the good fortune to work at sort of 4 Fortune 500 companies. So Nestle, Adidas, Microsoft, and Qualcomm. It was my last role at Qualcomm that I really started to dig in and work with our C-suite one-on-one on their digital and social media platforms. We recognized after watching sort of engagement decline year after year on the brand side that a lever we could pull was to build the personal brands of our leadership in addition to traditional corporate digital marketing. So I took that practice that I built over the last 5 years at Qualcomm and I have built my own company. So that's called Copilot Communications. And I do the same, very similar things that I did in-house now with clients externally. The real focus is on building executive digital brands that are clear, confident, and honestly, right now, more important than ever, they're human. And I'm sure we'll get into AI a little bit later in the chat, but that's playing a big role in what we're seeing happen. I'm happy to be here and I'm happy to be of service to everyone on this call.
We're so excited to have you and mine your very valuable playbook. Gary, you are our CFO at a publicly traded company, and you're also a frequent LinkedIn voice. Many people don't think of CFOs as storytellers or content generators. What made you turn to LinkedIn, and how has being a contributor helped you grow professionally? I know that professionally, you are not just limited to being a CFO. Talk a little bit about your activities.
Thanks, Aditi. Yeah, it's one of those things where it started really when I was younger. I actually went to college as a creative. I was not in the accounting and finance discipline. And I think that really helped me understand the ideas of marketing, paralanguage, and also just really both digital media and almost the intangible side of having a presence. That further got amplified. I was part of a fintech kind of unicorn that we spent a lot of money on customer acquisition cost. So got to see every verticality from a financial standpoint, but also from how our throughput was. So really started to see the power of those things. And then subsequent, yes, I'm a public company CFO at BioAmerica. We're trying to commercialize a new product, and it's very helpful, obviously, having a platform, having a voice, and trying to really have not only the community, but the medical side, really understand what we're trying to accomplish. And to your point, I am a nonprofit founder in the educational space. So there's so many different components here that kind of come up. And I think one of the biggest factors is people say cringe. It's like, oh, it's so cringy again, social. It's so hard. Like, as a finance person, beyond heart of the house, I think in terms of if we're doing earnings calls or whatever, you're a storyteller either way. So I don't know why that'd be any different from your personal branding. So it just so happens, yes, I'm a finance person. I want to be able to, give accessibility to the educational side of the house where I have a lot of mentees, right, in the educational system. So that allows access there, and then also be able to, promote what we have. So that's kind of the gist of it.
And you have some valuable insights about different audiences because when you have your hat on, from the perspective of a publicly traded company, you have more restrictions on what you can say and the language you can use versus the nonprofit, I would imagine. So we're going to get into all of that in just a couple minutes. But first, Vaughn, tell us about your company. I know LinkedIn was a client. We should also point out that you have more than 12,000 LinkedIn followers. It's very impressive. How does the platform help you? And how did you build that following?
Great. So my company is called Work Smart Advantage. And what I do is I offer team and leadership development programs and keynotes. And I specialize in something called creative leadership and creative problem solving. So in other words, what I do is I teach organizations really how to think creatively and use creativity as a strategic tool rather than a nice to have. And I'm sure as I explained that right now, that was still hard to understand. So what I found about LinkedIn was it really gave me a space to show people who I am and what I do. So I've been on LinkedIn now maybe 8 or 9 years, and just being on there consistently it's really become a primary tool I've used to develop my personal brand, my business brand, and build relationships, and really has become one of the highlights for me in terms of growing my business over the last 8 years.
And under the brand, the kind of umbrella of creativity, that also probably allows you to pick a broad spectrum of topics and relate that back to your business.
Absolutely. And I think that the idea that my work is in creativity, it allows me to be more creative on LinkedIn than I think other people give themselves permission to. But I'm sure we'll get into this later. I think we all need to give ourselves permission to be on LinkedIn and be creative.
And I had a lot of fun reading your feed this week.
Thank you.
We'll come back to you. But first, Jess, what does a successful LinkedIn profile look like? Take us kind of back to the basics.
Yeah, well, I'll start at, sort of the highest level, which is that my brain tends to think in sort of structured ways, which perhaps will appeal to this audience on some level. That there's sort of two big buckets within LinkedIn, right? There's the profile, and then there's the feed. So if we look at bucket number one, that's what a lot of us still associate with LinkedIn. It's sort of what it once was by itself years and years ago. That's talking about what we've done historically, right? So it's effectively an online resume with a little extras like recommendations and the about section and all that good stuff. In that bucket, certainly we want to get our digital house in order before we start digging into bucket number two. So the four things I often start with are profile pic, right? Then there's the banner, cover photo in the back. We want both of those to be clean, clear, representative of you in a current state. Cover photo often should not include a ton of text unless it's your company logo, but really should be emblematic of something that resonates with you. Maybe it's a landscape shot of the city you grew up in, as an example. Then you've got the headline, which is the line right underneath your name that travels with you around the platform, right? So that's key. Your profile photo and your headline are the two things that people see when they see you in their feed. And that should be succinct, less than 2 sentences, again, punchy, clear, confident. Last piece on that profile is the about section. And I think people really miss out on an opportunity there. You've got all the functional stuff below, all the places you've worked, the dates, the bullets, education, all that good stuff, volunteer work. The about section is like an open Word doc, right? It's a blank page. And so I love using that to really tell more of a before, during, and after story. Really make it more of a personal memoir about who you are and what you're hoping to do in the future. So get those four things set up so you feel good about that, and then move over to bucket two, which is really when you begin publishing and start writing content that would show up in other people's feeds.
The feed, yes. I want to ask a couple of follow-up questions. The about section, I think of it as almost the college essay that pulls together in story form all of the different activities you've done and your GPA and all that. Like, what does it mean? How does it all come together in terms of your personhood and what you're able to offer employers? How long should that about section be ideally?
Yeah, I mean, I would say 4 paragraphs max. Now, again, Yvonne does a great job of this, highlighting things with bullets, right? Making it more of that executive style of writing is really smart. But I wouldn't go longer than 4 paragraphs. And I would also just build on what you said, Aditi. that yes, it's for employers, but again, LinkedIn has radically changed in the last 4 years. So that's one audience for sure, potential future employers, but we're also talking about potential clients and customers, partners, and if you're a people leader, talent, right? People that are watching you or looking you up before they go interview to see, is this somebody that I want to go work for?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's more about you bring some personality into it, like who are you and how you're different from the other person who has similar skills.
Absolutely. Let them hear your voice in that about section because most of the rest of your profile is fairly regimented and static. That about section allows your voice to come through.
And I would think, yeah, the journalist in me also always has to think like when you're writing it, it shouldn't sound like a term paper. It should sound like you should start with an audience hook at the top, right? To catch people and layer it in that way.
Yep. And I would just lastly say it's fine to pull in a few highlights of your career. I mean, naturally you would do that in your sort of your college essay, to use your term. Um, but remember, all that stuff lives beneath, right?
Yeah.
It's super easy for everyone to get to all that down below. So use that territory to do something bigger and
Yeah.
a little bit more qualitative and
Mhm.
human, and let the below section really drive the professional bullets.
Yeah, we want to hear about the humanness, right? And what drives you and all those things. Do skill endorsements and recommendations matter?
So two pieces. So the skills, you can have up to five under each of your jobs. So to me, that's an easy way just to highlight the major things that you touched, product marketing or, P&L management, whatever. And so let those live again with each of your job roles. So those are good for, it's almost like search words, right? People that do search, recruiters largely are doing searches for those words. And then recommendations, I think, are actually a really underutilized section. Unfortunately, it's toward the bottom of your profile, which I think is a bummer. But think about it, it's like a Yelp review for you,
Mhm.
right? I mean, how many of us use review sites before we book a trip or a reservation, right? Or do much of anything? You want to see what everyone else is saying about that thing. So in this case, gathering recommendations from people that you've worked with, and ideally you want to ask within like a year or so of leaving that company or while you're still there, so that it's kind of fresh, is a great way just to build that repertoire of, hey, don't believe me. Look at the third party endorsements. It's also a lovely way to be generous and to offer recommendations to other people.
That's great. To the feed now, that's the other bucket we're talking about. First of all, how often should you post?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it depends. So I recommend to my clients who, again, are sort of that founder, C-suite leader, twice a week.
Mhm.
So maybe it's a Tuesday, Thursday. In my experience, that it's a bell curve, right? The week. Monday and Friday tend to be a little quieter. People are sort of ramping up and then kind of ramping down. So I might share something on a Friday that's a little softer, a little more sort of like human interesty. But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday tend to be great days. And again, think about time zones, right? So before, call it 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific, right? Which is kind of end of workday for the East Coast. We're never going to hit the whole globe, right? Some people are going to always be asleep, but earlier in day is great. I guess I would just lastly say, while maybe your stretch goal is twice a week, if you are someone who's not posting at all, or maybe it's like once every 3 or 4 months, that can feel really ambitious. And so, again, have grace and start with small, with maybe once a month, twice a month, and you can work your way up to that.
That is a great point, and it's actually less daunting to think about. Okay, once a month I can do, and then slowly build up, right? Because I think sometimes that's a roadblock for people.
For sure.
Impressions versus engagement. Can you define each of them and tell us which one's more important?
Yes. Okay. So this goes into, I know we don't have a lot of marketers here on the call, but I bet a lot of you have heard those terms. Just kind of quick refresh. So impressions, when you think about media, is the reach, right? How many times did X content get seen by somebody? It's kind of similar in web terminology to visits. So it's not visitors, it's not individual people, it's visits. So impressions is your quantity, is your reach. And then engagement is your depth, it's your quality. So how many times did a person take an action? So an engagement is everything from the lowest level of I liked it, right? That's the easiest threshold, all the way up to I reshared it with a comment. And then in the middle is stuff like just commenting below or saving it, right? So all those touches that people do in their feed of your post is considered an engagement. So the kind of money metric, if you're someone who likes numbers, which I know this audience does, is the engagement rate, right? Engagements are the numerator, impressions are the denominator. You get a nice percentage out of that. Ideally, you want to aim, if you're an individual leader, for 3 to 4%. But if you're not there, that's okay. That's again a stretch goal.
Yeah, you build up to that. Before we go to Gary, one really quick question. I used to head communications for a med tech company, and I found that LinkedIn constantly makes changes to its algorithm. So for instance, before it used to be best to post outside links, let's say, YouTube in the comments. Other times I've been advised to embed them in the post. How do you keep track of just the algorithm and all these changes? Is there one-stop shopping? How do you find out about the changes?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly, all of us, I'm sure, in our industry read, a fair amount of blogs, follow certain thought leaders, and you sort of, you try to digest the data as it comes. But you're spot on, Aditi. Like for any of the social platforms, again, I always refer to them as rented, not owned, right? At any moment, it can all be shut down. The algorithm can change, right? We don't own them like we own a website or an email newsletter database. But I think that what doesn't change is that LinkedIn and the majority of people that are on there, they want to see your point of view, right? They want to hear what you think about something, and they want to hear about it, in a visually compelling way, right? Like we know LinkedIn used to be very text oriented. Now it's all about video, for example. So I think trying to just continuously stay up to date and stay kind of modern with what you're seeing really get lift from people that you follow and going, how can I internalize those best practices into my own content?
That's great, reassuring. It's just kind of following the market and your instincts. Thank you so much. We're going to come back to you. But first, Gary, I feel like you are one of the busiest people I know because I look on your feed and sometimes you are going to a charity event, sometimes you're speaking to a college class, sometimes you are doing things for a work event. I mean, you're constantly out and about, and your feed is just rich with a lot of varied experiences. How do you come up with content that's on brand for you as a CFO and doesn't feel gratuitous?
That's a great question, Didi. I think I started, very similar to what Jess had mentioned. I was very afraid to post. I was doing a lot of these things. I just wasn't posting about it, and I wasn't really um, present in a way that was more public. And what I've started to realize was that you're already out there, you're already doing the effort. And I think that was one of the things that really changed my mindset. And then the other component was that I am multidimensional, and being multidimensional and also becoming a public figure at a public company. Anything related to BioAmerica, I do vet through with marketing, if you will. So there's a component that I cannot fully own, if you will, which I know a lot of struggle for some individuals. I know some people in banking, there are some very strong, let's call rules. But on my end, because I have that clearance end, but I do have multiple verticals because those are my passions. Those are the areas that I live with impact and purpose, that it allows me to have that ability to talk about those things as well. And, still being part of the startup community and still trying to do what we're trying to do with BioAmerica to try to commercialize in foods and trying to give back to the community, trying to teach, trying to do these things for Forge Optima. It gives me a lot of things to talk about. And I think trying to be very purposeful and being a genuine self is one of the most important things. I'm not just slapping AI and everything, which you see sometimes. And it's one of those things where they're important to me, and I didn't used to share it. And the only difference now is that I am.
And you spoke of all the different buckets that you're involved in, and then on top of that, sometimes you have some thought leadership posts. For instance, you had posts on the tariffs,
Yep.
Google antitrust decision, what it meant for
Yep.
Apple. it seems that for those things, they may be a little bit more far flung from your day job. How do you gauge the risk of going too far outside your sphere of experience and expertise?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think whenever we talk about consumer markets, we talk about the economy. I would say largely as a CFO, you need to know. I don't know how you can be informed making decisions about the future from a strategic standpoint without understanding what's happening, right? And then even when it comes to, for instance, like crypto or Genius Act that's kind of happened, you need to be more well versed. There's always crypto strategy and treasuries that are occurring in the capital market, right? So it goes back to if I'm part of the capital market and I don't understand it. So I think my rebuttal to that is that I think always learning more and always having maybe not always a full I was called subject matter expert opinion, but at least I'm adjacent, I'm in it, right? So I feel like also from a philosophical standpoint, I know enough to be dangerous, right? And but I'll never, obviously make completely polarizing comments either, because to your point, everyone can be a student. So
And I know you mentioned that you were doing all these things in life before, you're just not posting about them. At the
right.
same time, it's very time consuming to come up, like to curate that content. And I see your posts are very thoughtful. They're well articulated. How much time do you spend on LinkedIn posts per week, would you say, on an average week?
That's a great question. I don't consume, I don't watch Netflix. I just spend a lot of time looking at news, consuming that and kind of already pontificating on it. It ranges from 15, like, people want quant. Okay, so quant, 15 to 30 minutes probably a day at least, just for the post itself. But as you know, like instead of doom scrolling or whatever, checking out Snapchat or TikTok, I'm typically reading what's going on, whether it be in the economy, consumer markets, obviously in the educational spaces, which my nonprofit is in, and also just I'm a big fan of music, so trying to get just a more well-rounded component. So I would say yeah, and this is where I challenge a lot of my mentees as well. A lot of times we talk about I don't have time. Well, it's the same thing about working out. Do you have 20, 30 minutes? Do you have 20, 30 minutes instead of doom scrolling to see like maybe TikTok pasta? Well, maybe you can figure out what else you can do to enable yourself and your brand. So
That is a great point about the time. That's a really valuable insight. We're going to come back to you, but first let's go to Vaughn. You are a prolific LinkedIn voice, Vaughn, and I had a lot of fun reading your feed. I found myself going down the rabbit hole of your content. Over the course of the week, you wrote about the power of playing with Legos to grow leaders, to your obsession with lip gloss. And what I found really impressive is that you managed to speak about these topics with authority in a way that feels authentic. It also ties back to the work that you do. How do you decide what to post about? And that really strong kind of voice and your personality and humanness that we were talking about, that really shines through. How long did it take you to kind of develop that? Did that come over time?
Absolutely. I definitely want to address that because I always think back about where my LinkedIn journey started. And it really started with saying there's no possible way I'm ever posting on LinkedIn. I'm not asking questions. I'm not making a video. I had been working with a business coach about how to grow my business. So that was my why. My why was, how am I going to grow this business? And what she and I came up with was like, I need more visibility, and LinkedIn is where my clients are. So she asked me to post a question on LinkedIn, and she asked me to post a video on LinkedIn. And as I sat there in that meeting, nodding my head yes, I was thinking in my head, there's no way. There's absolutely no way I'm ever
I
posting.
can't believe that.
You see me now on LinkedIn. I'm
Yeah.
there every single day. So to answer your question, it was certainly a journey, right? And a journey first of my mindset of getting out of this idea that who am I to post on LinkedIn? What do I have to share? And I will have to say that I think the shift for me was that why. So anyone who's thinking about going on this LinkedIn journey and starting to post, what is your why? For me was I really wanted to share this concept of bringing creativity into the workplace because we're all innately creative. And I just felt it was such a powerful message to bring creativity into the workplace as a strategic tool, like I said before, and not a nice to have. And that's really where everything started to come from. I'm going to admit that my first 30-second video I posted on LinkedIn took 6 hours. And thank goodness, I think LinkedIn only allows us to go back a year because no one needs to see that.
No, I'm sure you're selling yourself short, but I think you really bring up such a great point that even someone like you I look at, and the fact that you were reticent to post and you just have to do it, and the fact that what drove you was the purpose of the
Right.
work that you do. It's the creativity, and it wasn't, oh, I just want to get a lot of leads coming in, because it feels like if you focus on the purpose of what you're doing career-wise, it's just going to be more resonant with you and get you more motivated intrinsically, but also that'll help you connect with your audience, and the audience will kind of get you more.
Absolutely. And I think you asked before, like how I grew to, I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't purposeful that I grew to over 12,000 followers. What I started doing was exactly that. I just started thinking about like, I want to post things that bring value. And that might be this idea of sharing my subject matter expertise, some personal anecdotes. And then, of course, what I failed to do for the first maybe couple of years of LinkedIn was share the work I was actually doing. It was almost like I almost defaulted
Oh.
to too much of just sharing too much value, but then people are like, oh, but what do you do for work? So I really found that balance to now
Yeah.
post things that bring value, personal anecdotes that reflect back to the work I do, and then just straight up sharing my offers and highlighting the work I do.
And before we're going to do a couple of rounds with all the panelists, but I want to ask you, I noticed you post LinkedIn articles, you have a LinkedIn newsletter, and you also have a steady stream of LinkedIn posts. How do you decide which channel within LinkedIn to publish a piece of content? Or if it's a similar topic, how do you kind of tailor each of those pieces of content to those channels?
So for posts, it's anything that I'm gonna, when I post, it's like if I come up with it, I'm either gonna not post it, but create it at that moment and then schedule it, right? So everything's scheduled ahead of time. If there's something immediate that I want to post, I'll post it right away. And they're usually short things about what I've been doing at work, little anecdotes I can write up in a short amount of time. And the other part, and it's often similar content, but I find the articles and the newsletter is more long form content. So that's sort of how I decide on it. And as you get to know me, you'll know that not a lot of what I do is not quite strategy. It's just trying, right? And just being open to being a beginner and just starting to post. I don't really look at a lot of metrics. I just post, and I think it's because now that I've been doing this for so long, I realize that what's really beneficial to me as a business owner is that consistency, that ability to share who I am and what I do. And then people will find me. So I don't really look at just, again, impressions, or what was the other one?
Engagements.
Engagement. Because I will tell you that will not motivate you. Especially when you're first starting, right? My first post, I'm like, okay, 3 people saw it, and my mom engaged with it. And then my next post, I had to remind my mom to engage with it.
Well, yeah, and you bring up a good point, Van. Like, it also matters who. I mean, I've got a client who, even if a post only reaches a small number of people, but it's a couple of those people are key for him, then it's like, again, quality over quantity.
Yes.
And how sticky they are, exactly, right? Or if it does lead to a lead or something. I want to do a couple of rounds of questions for you guys. Vaughn, let me stay with you. Who do you think does an excellent job creating content on LinkedIn? Who are some of your favorites to watch?
So I have 2 people that I love watching, and I follow them. I have there's that little bell you can click on their profile, so you can follow everything they do. So Jonathan Neiman, the co-founder and CEO of Sweet Greens. So I want to give you a CEO and then a founder. So he, as a CEO, right? A lot of people are like, oh, C-suite shouldn't be posting, whatever it might be, whatever your mental block is. He's posting all the time, and what he does is he posts celebrations. Right, he's always celebrating the wins of his team, talking about store openings, new product launches, company milestones. So it comes off as authentic to who he is, and it also comes off as this is a great person to work for. He's always celebrating us.
Yeah, and it's funny because, oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I've actually interviewed there's 3 co-founders, I believe, and they did it in Georgetown. Nick Jammett is one of the other co-founders, and he does the same thing on his LinkedIn and other social platforms, is celebrate those wins.
Yes, and I'm glad you asked that question, because I was going through and thinking about what information and what content draws me. That one really stood out, and the idea that it's about celebrating others. And then on a founder side, there's a gentleman named Scott McGregor. He's the founder of a online and in-person community called the Outlier Project. Is a community of people who are living extraordinary lives. And his posts are often personal, what I'm doing with my wife, with the kids, again, celebratory. And he really focuses on building connections with people. And then because he is trying to get people into this Outlier Project and share the people he knows with, with the members, he often shares not just what he knows, but who he knows. And I think that is his way of generating that interest in the community.
Great. Gary, who do you follow? Who do you think is doing a great job on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I can think of two. So I think Lorraine Lee, she's one of the ones who help you identify your voice, if you will, how to be seen. And she's actually been able to give me some very practical advice in terms of my own journey. And I think she just basically brings a lot of value. I think Vaughn had mentioned that too when she posts, and she obviously has a newsletter. She's always other things, but there are a lot of nuggets that you can be kind of drawn from that that really resonate, because I think she really kind of hits on the psyche of when you don't feel comfortable. But in the end, as we all know, many of us are founders or executives or whatnot, that you've made a career of doing things that make you uncomfortable, then you've become comfortable with it and you succeed, right? And I think that her messaging, even speaking to her is just super genuine person. The other one is not a person; it is a person but unknown. Secret CFO. So they have quite a bit. It's a guy for sure. So works for some large Fortune blank company. But he never will disclose where he is. But he also runs obviously almost like a business off of this secret CFO thing. And as a CFO, he actually brings up a lot of funny, and it's almost like because he's masked, he says things like the quiet things out loud. But he also brings a lot of value in terms of oh, if you don't know what long range planning is, well, obviously we do, but being able to think of different scenarios, and almost he does a mailbag version of questions he gets asked, right? So I find that to be more entertaining, more than anything. And also, I think some of the questions might be well, there's a veil. Well, how do I pierce the veil? Maybe you don't, and this guy didn't, and apparently he's got a huge following as well. So I think that those are probably the two for me.
Thanks so much, Gary. Jess, we don't have much time left, but I want to hear from you. Who do you think is doing a fantastic job on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I was taking notes as they were talking. I love getting these recommendations. Yeah. So a lot of the folks that I've got on my list are in the C-suite. So I love Frank Cooper. He is the CMO of Visa. I love Sarah Blakely, CEO, former founder of Spanx. Satya at Microsoft does a pretty good job, leans more on the corporate side, but he'll bring through some humanity as well. Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan, and Michael Atala, CMO at UiPath, an AI company. So all of them share this really lovely portfolio of both supporting their company, product launches, shining a light on employees and coworkers, also coupling it with thought leadership about the future of their industry, and then also peppering in some personal anecdotes, moments of vulnerability, and really spending time in the comments. Especially Frank Cooper is a great example of this, responding to those comments that come in under his posts.
Great. Thank you. I have a long list of leaders I want to follow now. And I will add to that one of my favorites, Adam Grant, the luminary at Wharton who teaches organizational behavior. I think he does a fantastic job on LinkedIn as well. Quickly, one last thing is from all three of you. We'll start with you, Jess. How can people reach you directly on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so per my brand, I lean very heavily into starting with the personal. So follow me at Jessica K. Jensen, so my personal LinkedIn profile. I have a company, Copilot Communications handle, but honestly, most of my stuff's on the Jessica handle.
Awesome. Gary, what about you?
Quite simply, I'll just drop the link in chat. I'm not, it's not a business for me. This is very much so just a platform. So I just dropped it into the link. I only have one.
That's great. And Vaughn, how can people reach out to you?
Well, since I use LinkedIn as my second home, definitely reach out to me there under my name, and I can drop a link in as well. And always, I mean, again, very accessible. You can email me, Van, V-A-N, at worksmartadvantage.com.
Thank you, all three of you, for your insights. And this concludes our taped portion of the workshop. If you are in our real-time live audience right now, do not leave. We have some interactive programming for you, so stay right there. If you're watching our pre-taped stream or listening to the podcast, thanks to everyone for tuning in. To replay this show, just ask your smart speaker or car to play CFO Focus Live. I'm Aditi Roy. We'll see you again next time.